Thank you very much, Matt, and thanks everyone for turning up early. I know you probably had a late night last night, but we still have another day of Innovate4Climate ahead of us. And I'm happy that we have the chance to present ourselves here at Innovate4Climate to an audience who hasn't heard that much about us yet. So I'm representing the implementing office of the NDE Germany. That won't say you anything. The NDE is the national designated entity of Germany, and that also won't tell you much. So we added the nice little subtitle, we are the contact point for climate technology made in Germany under the UNFCCC Technology Mechanism. So within the UNFCCC framework, there's a whole stream that focuses on technology transfer, on technology development, innovation, research and development, and how to bring technologies out to countries that need it. Since the Paris Agreement, we're not talking about developed and developing countries, we're simply talking about countries. So it's a bilateral cooperation between countries transferring technology within the technology mechanism on a same level. The NDEs were started in 2011 in Cancun by a COP decision, and they're meant as national focal points to understand what their country needs and what their country has to offer. So our job is to have a broad overview over what German technology developers are working on, what are they innovating, what are the German services regarding technology, and of course, as we're within the UNFCCC, climate technology. Technology here means the UN version of technology, which is not the business version of technology. So the UN version of technology is hardware, software, and the most unknown word, orgware. Hardware, we all know, is basically a computer, machine, some industry products. Software is software that we need to run those systems, but also data modeling, etc. And orgware is what we do to make enabling frameworks in the country as such. So the support to countries to understand capacity building, to understand policy development, and to understand what they need to do in order to be able to actually implement successfully and sustainably implement climate-friendly technology. Now, how do we do this? In Germany, we have a ton of actors that are already active in technology transfer. We have KfW, we have GIZ, we have the ministries, the BMU, the BMZ, the BMWI, we have the energy people. So we have a lot of people that are already working on transferring technology made in Germany to the countries that actually need it. So what we do is we try to be a contact point, a focal point. And we do this once by having a web portal for climate technology. It's a very user-friendly, simple web portal. You can go there, you can type in the technology you're looking for, click enter, and you're redirected to a page that will show you the German actors working with that technology or in that field. It will show... I can speak loudly, it's fine, right? So it will show you, for one thing, what German ministry is involved in developing technologies, transferring technologies, and transferring knowledge. It will show you what German association, organization, ministry on transferring that technology or further developing that technology. And it will also show you the companies that are actually providing that and providing it and working with developing countries or also countries, as we were just talking about countries. So it will show you on 3 different Germany, and German has to offer for those climate issues, divided up on mitigation and adaptation. Then the second point that was on my slide, which is not there any longer, is the matchmaking. So what we do is we actively go out to countries, we seek bilateral cooperation with other countries' NDE, as that the country needs technology-wise. So we work bilaterally with them, we go to their country, work on finding a topic with them, a technology topic, and then we bring in German technology providers, German knowledge partners, and try to get those people that really need to be together in a room, so similar to what the Innovate4Climate does, to actually talk to each other. So we lock them up for 2 days around, make them talk to each other, and try to see where can we go from here. We try to get the right contact partners in contact with each other. Third thing that we have on our web portal is an analysis called the technology needs database. So what we did is we took the TNAs, the technology needs assessment that the countries themselves develop under the UNFCCC, and we took the NDCs that have talked about much here at the Innovate4Climate, the nationally determined contributions, and we analyzed what technologies are actually mentioned, technologies are prioritized, and how can we use that information. We made a database. Currently, you just go. Again, you can either click on the country and you will get an analysis of what technology has identified as their own needs to mitigation and adaptation goals, or you can, again, adaptation technology. You'll get a colorful highlight on what countries have actually identified those technologies. So if you're a technology provider with a technology, you will go look at the technology, obviously, and then you will have identified talk to it, and then we try to facilitate that contact for you as our goal as being a national contact point. So that's pretty much what we do. It's fairly simple. We're pretty much just trying to connect the right people with the right technologies to accelerate the technology transfer under the Paris Agreement. Don't accelerate the technology transfer and the capacity building for those technologies and the financing, we will not be able to reach the goals under the Paris Agreement. So that's what we do as the NDE Germany. We work on behalf of the Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. That's where the German government decided to place a national designated entity. So we work closely with the German technology providers from industry and business, and we also work closely with their associations. And that's pretty much what we do. Thank you for your attention, and now I'm sure Matt has some questions.
Well, Julia, you did an amazing job, especially considering that the power went out halfway through the pitch, and you continued unflustered, calm, cool, and collected. And I really appreciate that, and I think it's a good testament to the kinds of work that you all are doing at NDE. So we promised a dynamic pitch environment. So I'm not going to joke around. I guess it's too soon to joke around about whether or not that was planned, to see if you could think on your feet. But thank you very much for letting us know what you do and all the good work that you do. I do have some questions. I'm very interested in this. I also work in the clean technology space and technology transfer generally. So, you mentioned one. Let's see if the microphones work again.
Oh, good. We don't need to yell at you.
Super dynamic.
Makes for a much nicer environment this morning here.
Keeping us on our toes.
Right.
One of the interesting things that I picked up that you said early on was, in the Paris Agreement environment, there's not developed countries and developing countries. There's just countries. How do you see that playing out in practice as you have conversations between countries?
I mean, obviously, so it's just the Paris Agreement that tries to not divide between developing and developed countries, but under the UNFCCC, we still have Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 countries. And the NDEs are also split up into that biased Annex 1, non-Annex 1. So Annex 1 is industrialized countries, and non-Annex 1 are developing countries. And obviously they have access to finance, which is very much important for them to actually build the capacities to be able to analyze in their country what technologies are needed. And the industrialized countries or Annex 1 countries are financed by their respective ministries, which makes sense that they wouldn't be financed by public sources. So there is public financing to support the non-Annex 1 NDEs, which is important. But when we're talking about technology transfer, the Paris Agreement opens up much more to not have this bias between one country is transferring to another, but rather how can these countries collaborate and work together. So under the technology mechanism, there's a discussion on indigenous and endogenous technologies, and it's for the providing country to better understand what technologies are already available in that country and what can we do working with that technologies that they have used since forever, maybe sometimes, to optimize them, to update them so that they're actually mitigation and adaptation technology and relevant for the goals under the Paris Agreement. So it's not always just us coming there bringing technology, but also understanding what technologies do they have and how can we adapt them for the uses that we need under the Paris Agreement. So that has changed a bit since the Paris Agreement, but obviously there's still the question of finance for who's financing those technologies.
Well, and that's another point that I wanted to bring up. And I mean, to kind of chip in on this too, I mean, I think it's more helpful when you approach folks in terms of a partnership, right? As opposed to, well, we're a developed country coming to a developing country and we're going to help you, as opposed to saying, here's what you have, here's what we have, here's how we can both mutually benefit from this relationship and starting on an even footing. And I always find those types of partnership-based interactions to be far more productive. So I liked that you brought that up early on. But then you also brought up this idea of finance. And although NDE is, as you say, the contact point for climate technology made in Germany, it's about technology transfer. You touch on these other issues that are very important and integrally related, which is the finance or the legal issues, or you're under the regulatory environment, or what's going to happen in the Paris Agreement, for example. How do you see the lines blending or dissolving, or are there hard lines between technology and transfer and finance, and how do you all as an organization navigate that or help your partners navigate that?
Well, I think that we need to dissolve all of those lines, because if we really want to reach the Paris Agreement, okay, good. If we really want to reach the goals, it doesn't make much sense to have one stream talking about financing and the other stream talking about technology. We need to talk about how all of these streams can go together to actually reach the goals under the Paris Agreement. So what we do is we do talk about technology a lot, but Germany, that's the landscape that we're analyzing, has a lot of financing mechanisms for green development, for climate technology, and we try to bring those actors into every discussion that we do and into the matchmakings that we do. So one example that we have is that we had a very successful workshop in Brazil on e-mobility. And we didn't just bring in the technology providers from German side, but also the technology providers from the Brazilian side, but also the ministry level was very active there, and then also the financiers, in addition to the people who actually work within the Paris Agreement and understand what we need to do to get to the mitigation level that we need to get to. So we had the financiers in the same room with the people trying to develop a project, because we always hear the discussion on how much money is out there and that there are billions and trillions, and we've had that discussion in the plenary the last days, on how much money is out there, and the banks don't know where to go with all that money. And then if you go to the UN conventions, you hear all these project developers saying, we have all these projects and we don't have any financing. So there is a gap that we need to bridge, because there are a lot of great projects, but what you need to do is you need to make those projects a business case, to make finances interested in those technology developments. And that's what we're trying to get to make business cases out of green development projects.
Well, and you said projects too, and what is the definition of a project, right? Is it an idea, or is it something that can actually get to financial closure and can actually get to implementation and then deliver? I mean, the stages of the project cycle are really lengthy. I think you're onto something here, right? And you offer the service of the matchmaking and the web portal to try to make sense of this large, complex, sometimes often confusing landscape. Do you see which of these three kind of activities and services that you provide as the most valuable, and which are your clients and your partners saying, yeah, this is the one we really appreciate the most, or are they all important in a different way?
All of them are important, Matt.
Of course, I walked myself into a corner on that one.
We do not do any unimportant things at the NDE Germany. Thank you for asking.
Or it was a softball question and you nailed it.
Right. No, I mean, depending on who you're talking to and who you're providing the services for, there are different levels of importance. Obviously, our partners in non-Annex 1 countries find the website most important. To find the partners in Germany through just typing in the technology that they're looking for and getting an answer on who's working on that in Germany and who could my potential partners be. But our partners in Germany, and we're going to open up the database for public use, which at the moment is not public, but if you want to log in, you just send a login and we'll let you in. So it's not restricted anymore. But our German partners find that most helpful, because there's a lot of information out there in the UNFCCC environment with the TNAs and NDCs and with the analysis that the countries themselves are doing, and you just need to be able to make that available for actors in a way that they understand it. So if you just go to a German company and you say, oh, there's a great analysis of the TNA for Mongolia out there, they will not be able to, go through the entire TNA and pick out the technologies. So we did it in a world map view. You click on the technology or country, and you get the countries highlighted that have prioritized your technology. And you can also get a data sheet on the country that will show you additional data on the ease of doing business index, and does the EU have trade agreements with that country? What trade agreements are in place? Does the country have a UN office, GIZ office, KfW office? So you get additional information who your potential partners in that country could be, and it's all very easily accessible, so you don't need to go looking for it yourself. That was a lot of work that we put into it, and we understand that businesses and developers don't want to put that work into it because it's a lot of work. We did it as our task of the NDE Germany to provide that information, and I think that our German partners find that most helpful, to be able to just click on the country and understand what the need is and what technology is highlighted there.
Well, and what resources are available too. I mean, you mentioned all of the stakeholders who are active in this space in Germany alone, and then you add the international space and the counterpart space as well. And it's a tremendous amount of information. So I see it as an incredibly valuable service that you provide for folks to put all of that information in one place. And so I might have to sneak a fake login from you to get past the barrier to check it out. But it certainly is a tremendous challenge to do that and condense all that information into one place. So I think it's definitely a valuable service. We see it in the climate finance landscape at the World Bank, and even folks who are very familiar with it can often have trouble navigating and identifying what is the exact right resource for what you want to do for your project or your activity, and who do you talk to, and how do you compare the different actors and stakeholders and who's best placed. So I think it's a really incredible and important service. As you've opened these resources up for folks, how have you seen any kind of channeling or focusing on certain types of technologies or countries naturally? It doesn't sound to me like you're really pushing one, area or geography or technology more than others. It sounds like, but do you see any kind of a natural kind of focus? And if so, what is that? And if not, why not, do you think?
I mean, we try to be balanced. As a contact point under the UN, we have a task to both present mitigation and adaptation measures. But mitigation measures are always more interesting, especially for financing people, because you can actually show mitigation results and you can show the tons of CO2 you've saved. So it's much more, in a way, sexy to financiers than saying, "Oh, we built a dam, isn't that great?" So there is a lean toward mitigation, but we try to represent both technology options at an equal level. Energy efficiency, renewable energy, obviously is top of the list when it comes to mitigation measures. So we also try to kind of create a balance in providing information on other technologies that are not as often discussed, and bring that forward, such as infrastructure building, green cities, urban development, green urban development, so those measures, but also measures at a local level that are not necessarily high tech, but that just need to be understood by the people implementing them and carrying them out. So we try to represent everything equally and not prioritize different technologies.
Absolutely. Do we have any questions or feedback from the audience? I don't want to take up all the time. Gentleman in the front, please.
Yeah, hi, good morning. I'm really happy to hear that you have all this comprehensive amount of information. But what do you do when you have a technology that people might not be aware of exists? In our case, we work on concrete without clinker. So it's a radical new technology, maybe 80-90% reduction of carbon dioxide emissions. But people are not aware that this might be possible, and it depends on the mineral resources in the countries. How would I find, in our case, what would I put into the search to identify countries that want to work on potentially that kind of area, reduction of carbon footprint of cement?
So I think we have over 180 subcategories for technologies. Cement is one of them, because we already have some renowned German technology providers in our database, ThyssenKrupp, Heidelberg Cement. So the typical ones that are also working on reducing their emissions in the cement production, which is a very important factor to do. I'm not sure what exactly you would put in, but I would start with cement. That would be a good place to start. And then the search item that we have on the website might give you, or will give you, options that are available in our database, and then you can go from there. So it's fairly easy. to do that, and that's also so. The knowledge and all these different technologies cannot be gathered in one person and cannot be gathered in the one person in the ministry that's actually the person NDE Germany. So there's also a person in the ministry NDE Germany. And that's what they have us for. So we have a whole implementing office that works like a sponge, is walking around, soaking up all the information on the new developing technologies that we can find to then bring that to the people who actually know that. So we try to file as much information as possible into our systems and then be able, once we talk to another stakeholder that says, oh, I'm working on developing more emission-friendly cement production, then we can say, you know what, we have about 5 technology providers that we can point you to. And we've done that in the past, actually, just by soaking up all the information. I think we saved one larger German corporation the R&D development of about 3 years because we could point them to a research institution that was working on exactly the technology that they were looking to implement, and they're trying to start a project now in Kenya, I think, on agro-photovoltaics. So that's what we do, and that's what we're there for. We're pretty much an office that just has the information and tries to connect the right people at the right time.
Just one quick follow-up question to that. How can small companies with new technologies that would potentially radically change the marketplace then compete with the barriers to entry that the big boys who are already in place, who have developed certain standards that are based on conventional cement content or stuff like that, rather than performance properties, how can you support radical innovations that will face all of these market barriers?
We do collect information for innovative technologies at different levels. So we have information on who finances R&D processes, who finances startups, who finances big corporations. Where do you go if you have a project in the realms of 50 million? Where do you go if you have a project where you just want to do a demonstration project and want to show that that technology actually works in the realms of 250,000. So we have information on the different levels, and through dialogue and communication, which is very important in everything that we do, we try to understand at what point is your technology and then to point you to the right technology provider. And we get inquiries from our NDE contact points all over the world on different technologies, and then we can also point you to the right country. So that's what we're trying to do.
I think we have time for one more question and answer. I see this gentleman, Ranjit, behind you at the table right there.
I'm coming from international innovation policy, so I'm always wondering if you as well liaise with these other fields. I count around 2 other workshops between Brazil and Europe on electromobility last year. And so I think there is a lot of double engagement and less coordination. How can we improve that?
So what we try to avoid as the main point actually is the doubling of activities. The workshop that we had in Brazil was actually also in cooperation with a large GIZ project that is working on e-mobility. So we do not double it. We try to bring the stakeholders that are already working on certain technologies together in one room. Also, we do not, so we have information on energy efficiency and renewable energy and the actors in Germany, but there are a lot of great initiatives working on that. So there's the energy solutions from the BMWI, there's the energy partnership from the BMWI that are working on energy with different countries. And if we get an inquiry on energy efficiency or renewable energy, we will just point to the initiative already working on that. So we're a signpost basically with 1,000 arms. And we're not trying to build the road. We're just trying to point in the right direction and then make the people that are already building the road continue with that in the right direction and get the right actors involved.
I really like that analogy of not building the road, but putting 1,000 signposts on it, because it can be really confusing. And if you don't have a map, you don't really know. You know the endpoint that you want to get to, you may not necessarily know how to get there. And I think that the work that you're doing is certainly really important underlying work. And it sounds like really tough work, right? Chasing down leads, collecting information, putting it in one place, but it's already delivering results, like you said, in shortening R&D times and saving companies money. We have a couple of minutes left, maybe one final prompt as you offer some concluding remarks. It seems like you just got started in 2016, no? I mean, very recently. So as you get up and going, what do you think is next and what does the future hold for you?
So we started our implementing office in 2016, in the summer of 2016, but we're just a dwarf standing on the shoulder of giants. I just love that analogy. So we're not starting anything new. We're just collecting the information that's already out there and making it more accessible. And in addition to making it more accessible, we're not waiting for anyone to come seek our information. We go to people and we hold it up in front of their face. So what we do a lot is to go to events like this, Innovate4Climate, but also to meetings to other stakeholders and telling them over and over again, the information is already out there. Please take the information that is available for you and for your business and make it usable. So I think that's what we're doing. We are fairly young at what we are doing, but the information that we're working with and the organizations that we're working with are not young. And so we're just going to stand on the shoulders and wave and yell as loudly as we can for everyone to use the information that we have made available, as we understand how valuable that information is for businesses, and we just need to make it understandable for people outside of the UNFCCC.
Great. Julia, thank you very much. You responded to the power outage exceptionally well. I wish you all the best. It sounds like this is really important work, and good luck in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt.
We're going to do a quick over and then the next pitch at 9:30.